My family accused me of stealing a $2K bracelet and kicked me out. 5 years later, the truth destroyed my sister. And now my grandma left me everything, leaving them with nothing. I'm 28 years old. I work as a systems analyst at a tech company, and I need to get this story off my chest because what happened 5 years ago basically destroyed the relationship with my family. Or, well, what was left of it. The thing is that now everyone wants to come back like nothing happened, and I'm here trying to understand if they ever really loved me or if I'm only important now for reasons that have nothing to do with me. I guess I should start at the beginning, when I still believed my family was normal. You know, before I realized I'd been invisible to them for years. I grew up in a middle-class house. Nothing fancy, but we didn't lack anything either. I had a younger sister, Samantha, who's 3 years younger than me. When we were little girls, things were more or less normal. Or so I thought. But looking back, I can see the signs of what would come later. I remember perfectly the exact moment when everything changed. It was in 6th grade when I got my first bad grade, a 7 in math or something like that. Nothing terrible, but not perfect either. My parents went crazy. They grounded me for 2 weeks without going out. Took away my phone. Well, back then it was like an old Nokia. I barely used. And basically treated me like I'd committed a crime. The thing is that Samantha, who was like 8 or 9 years old at that time, also got bad grades that same period. I think even worse than mine. And my parents literally told her, "Oh, don't worry, sweetie. You'll do better next time," and bought her ice cream. Ice cream. I was locked in my room, unable to see my friends, and she was eating ice cream in the living room watching TV. From that moment, things only got worse. And when I say worse, I'm not exaggerating. In high school, Samantha started developing faster than me. She was prettier according to conventional standards, I guess. Taller, thinner, perfect hair, the whole thing. I was shorter, a bit chubby, wore glasses. Basically the complete stereotype of the less favored sister. My parents started investing everything in her. Like everything. They paid for modeling classes for her, which cost like $300 a month. I know because I heard my dad complaining about the price, but he paid anyway. Bought her expensive clothes from brands I couldn't even touch. Took her to beauty salons every 2 weeks. I, meanwhile, wore clothes that were too small from years before, and if I wanted to cut my hair, I had to save from my allowance, which was ridiculously small compared to Samantha's. Once I asked if they could buy me a new laptop for school because mine was like 5 years old and barely turned on, and my mom told me there was no budget. Literally 2 days later, they bought Samantha a new iPhone, because hers had a microscopic scratch on the screen. Middle school was horrible. I'm not gonna lie. My parents went to all of Samantha's events, absolutely all of them, even to cheerleading practices that weren't even official presentations. I was in the debate club and we won several state-level competitions, but my parents never came to see me compete, not even once. They always had some excuse, that they were tired, that they had work, that Samantha needed them to take her somewhere. I graduated with honors from high school, and my mom barely even congratulated me. She just said, "Oh, that's nice, Mija," and kept talking on the phone. But when Samantha passed the year, literally just passed, not even with good grades, they organized a family dinner at an expensive restaurant and showered her with gifts. Can you believe that? Me with honors, barely even a hug, her barely passing and complete party. So I entered college and thought that maybe things would get better because I'd have my own space, but no. It was worse in a certain sense because I realized that when I wasn't physically there, I simply didn't exist to them. They'd call me maybe once a month, and that was because I'd call them first, and they wouldn't answer until days later. Samantha, meanwhile, kept living at home like a princess, and here comes the part that really started the whole disaster. In her senior year of high school, Samantha started dating this guy named Derek, the typical star quarterback of the football team. Family with money, sports car, the whole movie. My parents went crazy over this guy. They treated him better than me, and I'm not exaggerating. Derek had dinner at home like 3 times a week, and my mom cooked his favorite dishes. My dad took him to play golf. My dad, who never had time to go to my school events, suddenly had time for golf. Basically, they adopted him as the son they never had or something like that. I'd come home on vacations and it was like being a ghost. Once I arrived for Thanksgiving and nobody picked me up at the bus station. I had to pay for an Uber with money I didn't have. And when I got home, it turns out they had invited Derek and his family to dinner, and nobody had told me. They hadn't set a place for me at the table. I literally had to eat in the kitchen while everyone was in the dining room laughing and having a good time. My grandmother, my dad's mom, was the only one who noticed and came to keep me company. She told me that wasn't right and that she would talk to my dad, but I told her not to worry because I was already used to it, which was sad but true. Things reached their peak when I was in my third year of college. I was like 21. I came home for spring break. I think it was in March or April of 2019. I don't remember exactly, but I know it was hot. Samantha had this gold charm bracelet that Derek had given her. It was expensive, like really expensive, like $2,000 or something because it had small diamonds and the whole thing. She wore it all the time. It was her most prized possession, and she never took it off. She literally slept with it on. Well, one day, the bracelet disappeared. Samantha searched all over the house. My parents turned everything upside down, and nothing. It didn't appear anywhere. And then Samantha, my sister, the golden child who could never do anything wrong, accused me directly of stealing it. She said I was jealous of her relationship with Derek, jealous that she had nice things and I didn't, jealous of the attention she received, and that obviously I had stolen it to sell it, or so she wouldn't have it anymore. I was completely in shock, like I couldn't even process what she was saying. I told her she was crazy, that I would never steal anything from anyone, much less from her, that I didn't even care about her stupid bracelet. But my parents, you know what my parents did? They believed her immediately. They didn't even ask for my version. Didn't even consider that maybe she had lost it somewhere else or that it had fallen off? No. They automatically assumed I was the thief. My dad grabbed me by the arm, and when I say grabbed me, I mean he left bruises. I can still feel his fingers squeezing me. He took me to my room and started checking all my stuff. He threw all my clothes on the floor, emptied my drawers, checked my backpack, even put his hands between my mattress and the box spring, looking for the damn bracelet. My mom was standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, looking at me like I was the worst person in the world, and Samantha was there crying dramatically, saying she couldn't believe her own sister had done that to her. Obviously, they didn't find anything because I hadn't stolen anything, but that didn't matter. My dad looked at me and said, "You have 24 hours to return the bracelet, or to get out of this house and never come back." 24 hours. I begged him to believe me, told him I'd never given him reasons to distrust me, that I'd always been the responsible daughter, that this didn't make sense. He told me to shut up, that he was fed up with my lies, that I'd been a disappointment since 6th grade, and that he should have known I'd end up being a thief. I simply couldn't believe this was happening to me. I called my grandmother crying and she came immediately. Tried to talk to my dad, but he wouldn't listen to her. Told her it was his house and his rules and that she shouldn't get involved. My grandmother told me to stay with her, that her house would always be open to me, but I was so angry, so hurt, that I just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I packed my things that same night. Everything barely fit in 2 suitcases and a backpack, and I left. My mom didn't even come down to say goodbye. Samantha was in her room still doing her victim theater, and my dad just watched me leave without saying a word. My grandmother took me to the bus station, gave me some money that I didn't want to accept, but she insisted, and told me this wasn't the end, that the truth always comes to light. I just wanted to disappear. I went back to college and basically hit rock bottom. I was devastated, angry, confused, all at the same time. It was working at a coffee shop part-time, but it wasn't enough to pay rent and school. So I got another job at a department store on weekends. And sometimes did freelance graphic design work at night because I'd taken some classes. I slept like 4 hours a day, lived on coffee and instant ramen. Lost like 15 pounds in 2 months. My grades started dropping because I didn't have time to study properly. I almost lost my scholarship. It was the darkest time of my life. No exaggeration. My grandmother was the only one who stayed in contact with me. She'd call me every week to see how I was. Sent me money when she could, even though I told her not to, came to visit me several times and brought me homemade food. I asked her how things were at home, and she told me Samantha was still with her drama. That my parents were angry at me for leaving without returning the bracelet, because obviously they still believed I had it, and that Derek was still being treated like royalty. She asked if I wanted her to tell them where I was, and I said no. That if they wanted to talk to me, they had my number, but they never called. Not even a message. Nothing. It was like I had died to them. 5 years went by like that. 5 complete years without talking to my parents or Samantha. I graduated from college with honors again. Not to brag, but after everything I went through, I felt I deserved it. got my current job that pays well, moved to a decent apartment in the city, basically rebuilt my life from scratch. I kept in contact with my grandmother, of course. She was the only real family I had. She'd tell me things from time to time, that Derek had broken up with Samantha at the end of her first year of college because she was too dramatic and controlling her words, not mine, that Samantha had tried studying fashion design but dropped out, that my parents were having financial problems because they'd spent too much money maintaining Samantha's lifestyle. I listened to all this without feeling anything. Honestly, I'd emotionally disconnected from them completely. Then December of last year arrived. My grandmother called me and invited me to her Christmas dinner, said she wanted me to come because she wasn't getting any younger and who knows how many more Christmases she has left. I hesitated a lot because I knew my parents and Samantha would be there, but my grandmother begged me, told me it was important to her and to please come even if just for a bit. I finally accepted, mostly for her, but I was super nervous, like I didn't sleep the night before, thinking about what it would be like to see them after so long. I arrived at my grandmother's house on December 24th around 7 at night. There were already several relatives there, uncles, cousins, people I hadn't seen since before the incident. Some greeted me normally, others looked at me weird. I guess my parents had told them their version of the story where I was the villain. My parents arrived about half an NET, hour later with Samantha. And when they saw me, the tension was immediate. My mom made that face she makes when she's uncomfortable. My dad looked at me and then turned away, and Samantha literally stood frozen in the entrance like she'd seen a ghost. I just greeted them with a casual hello and kept talking to my cousin about her new job, acting like nothing was wrong. Dinner was super awkward. My grandmother sat me next to her at the main table, which was sweet but also intensified the situation more. My parents were on the other side of the table and barely looked at me. Samantha was like 3 chairs away playing with her phone. The food was delicious as always. My grandmother is the best cook, but I could barely swallow because I felt all eyes on me. People made small talk, trying to ignore the giant elephant in the room, the fact that the family was clearly divided. After dinner, my grandmother stood up and said she had an important announcement to make. Everyone fell silent and paid attention. My grandmother took out a small blue velvet box and opened it. Inside was a beautiful antique necklace, like one of those gold ones with a big locket-shaped pendant that has photos inside. She explained that this necklace had been in our family for generations, that it was passed from mother to daughter or granddaughter, depending on who the matriarch considered most responsible and worthy of caring for the family legacy. And then she looked at me and said she wanted me to have it. I was in shock, like I didn't know what to say. I told her grandma I can't accept this. It's too important. But she insisted, put it on my neck herself, and gave me a long hug while whispering in my ear that I deserved this and much more. My family's reaction was immediate. I saw my mom go pale. My dad squeezed his glass so hard I thought it was going to break, and Samantha stood up from her chair so fast she knocked it over. My grandmother continued speaking, explained that this necklace wasn't just a necklace, it was a symbol of who would inherit everything when she was no longer here: the house, the savings, some investments she had, everything. She said she had made this decision years ago after seeing how they had treated me, how I had rebuilt my life alone without anyone's help but hers, and that she trusted I would use those resources responsibly, unlike others in the family who only knew how to spend on superficial things. She didn't mention names, but we all knew who she was referring to. The atmosphere got thick, like you could cut the tension with a knife. My mom tried to smile and said something like, "Oh, what a nice gesture, Mom. I'm sure Christine will take good care of that." But you could see in her face she was mentally calculating how much money that meant. My dad suddenly approached me and asked how I was, how work was going, where I lived now. Questions he hadn't asked me in 5 years. Samantha looked at me with a face that was a mix of shock and fury. Went outside to the yard and I heard her talking on the phone, super upset with someone. The following days were surreal. Suddenly my mom was sending me messages that she missed me, that we should get together for coffee, that she wanted to show me the house because they'd remodeled the kitchen. My dad sent me a long email talking about lost time and how family is the most important thing and blah blah blah. Samantha added me on social media after having blocked me for years. It was so obvious what they were doing that it was laughable. But it also made me angry because seriously, did they think I was so dumb as not to notice? A week after Christmas, my grandmother invited me to lunch at her house, just the two of us. She explained everything in more detail. She told me she had been there that night when Samantha accused me, that she'd heard everything from the stairs. She told me that a few months after the incident, she had found the famous gold bracelet. You know where it was? In Derek's car, it had fallen between the seat and the center console. Apparently, Samantha lost it when they were in the car and never looked for it there. Derek returned it to her discreetly, and Samantha never told my parents she'd found it, never admitted I'd been innocent all that time, just went on with her life like nothing happened. My grandmother confronted my parents about this, and they told her it didn't matter, that I had been a problematic daughter anyway, and that it was better I wasn't at home. That's what hurt me most. Not so much the initial accusation, but the fact that even after knowing the truth, they decided it wasn't worth looking for me or apologizing. My grandmother told me that from that moment she decided I would be her heir, that she had officially changed her will like 3 years ago, and that she wanted me to know the truth about everything. She asked if I wanted her to tell my parents that I knew about the bracelet, and if I wanted to confront them. I told her not yet, that I needed to process all this first. But things got out of control quickly. My parents and Samantha suddenly started showing up in my life uninvited. One afternoon, I was in my apartment and the doorbell rang. It was the three of them with bags of food saying they wanted to have dinner together as a family. I told them it wasn't a good time, that I had work to do. But my mom practically pushed through the door saying, "Oh, don't be like that. We've come from so far away." Far nothing, they live like 40 minutes away by car. I tried to be polite but firm, told them I appreciated the gesture, but seriously had things to do and maybe another time. My dad got serious and said we needed to talk about the future, about Grandma, about making sure she was well taken care of. That's when I realized this wasn't about reconciliation, it was about the money. I told them they had to leave, and Samantha started crying, saying I was being cruel, that how could I reject my own family, like that after they had come with the best intentions? I said, "Samantha, are we really going to do this? Are you really going to act like you don't know exactly why I haven't talked to you in 5 years?" She put on a confused face and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. You left without saying anything." That's when I lost my patience and told them to get out of my apartment, or I'd call security. My mom started screaming that I was ungrateful, that after everything they had done for me, I was paying them back like this, that I was a terrible daughter. I literally had to call security to get them out. It was a horrible scene with my mom crying dramatically in the hallway, saying her own daughter was abandoning her while the guards escorted them out. But it didn't end there. Samantha started a campaign on social media and with mutual acquaintances, where she basically painted me as the villain. She sent a mass text message to people she knew, saying I had stolen money from the family, which was totally false, that I had abandoned our parents in their old age. They're like 58 years old. They're not helpless elderly people, and that I was taking advantage of my sick grandmother to keep her inheritance. My grandmother is perfectly healthy, mentally and physically for her age. Some of those contacts wrote to me asking if it was true, and I had to explain the whole situation to them, which was exhausting and humiliating. The situation escalated until my grandmother finally got fed up. She organized a family meeting at her house and invited everyone, uncles, cousins, everyone. When my parents and Samantha arrived, my grandmother confronted them directly in front of everyone. She asked them if they wanted to tell the family the truth about the gold bracelet, about how they had falsely accused me and then refused to apologize even when they knew I was innocent. My mom tried to interrupt her, saying that was a private matter, but my grandmother continued, pulled out old text messages, emails, evidence that they knew the truth and never did anything about it. My uncles were shocked. My cousins started questioning my parents. It was a total disaster for them. The best or worst part, depending on how you see it, is that the whole situation with Derek also came to light. Apparently, Samantha had told Derek for years that she came from a family with a lot of money, that she would eventually inherit a fortune, that she basically promised him a lifestyle she was never going to be able to give him. When Derek found out after they broke up that it turns out the rich grandmother had disinherited that part of the family and given everything to the older sister, who supposedly had been exiled for being a thief, he got really angry because he felt Samantha had lied to him about everything. He called Samantha and told her that now he understood why she had been so obsessed with keeping up appearances and spending money she didn't even have, that she was a liar and manipulator, and that he was glad he had ended things with her when he did. Samantha was destroyed. Like really destroyed, because she was still kind of in love with him, or at least in love with the life he represented. My parents started receiving calls from other relatives questioning their version of events. Several uncles and cousins contacted me to apologize for believing them without asking for my side of the story. Some even offered me help if I needed anything. which was nice but also a bit late, right? Like 5 years late. But well, I appreciated the gesture anyway. The thing is that now, like 2 weeks after all that drama, my parents contacted me again. This time it was a long email from my dad, where he sounded different, more humble, let's say. He said he'd had time to think about everything, that he realized they had made mistakes, that they wanted to fix things not because of the money but because they had really realized they had lost me. Part of me wants to, I believe them, you know, because at the end of the day, they're my parents, and there's a part of me that still remembers when I was a little girl and things were different. But another part of me, the part that had to survive alone working 3 jobs while they didn't even call to see if I was alive, that part doesn't trust anything they say. My grandmother tells me the decision is mine, that she'll support me in whatever I decide. She says she's not going to live forever. She's 81 years old but super lucid and healthy. Knock on wood. And that she doesn't want to leave me with unresolved conflicts, but she also understands if I decide there are things that can't be forgiven. I've told her I don't know, that I need more time. And she respects that. Samantha hasn't tried to contact me directly after her smear campaign failed. I heard somewhere that she's seeing a therapist now, which I guess is a positive step. But I don't know if it's genuine or if my parents forced her to make her look better in front of the family. I also heard she's working at a store because it turns out without the unlimited financial support from our parents, who don't have as much money as before, she has to support herself. Just like I had to do at 21, but well, better late than never, right? Last week, my mom sent me a message on my birthday. It just said, "Happy birthday, Christine. I hope you're well." She didn't mention anything else, didn't ask for anything, just that. I haven't responded yet. I don't know what to tell her. Honestly, thanks. Where were you the last 5 birthdays? Did you remember I exist only because now I'm convenient for you? What I do know is that I've worked too hard to rebuild my life, to let them destroy me again. I have a good job, good friends, a nice apartment I pay for myself, and a healthy relationship with my grandmother, who's the only one who showed me that family love doesn't come with conditions. If my parents and Samantha want to be part of my life, eventually, it's going to have to be on my terms, not theirs, and definitely not for financial reasons. The truth is, I don't need them anymore. And I think that's what hurts them most. Realizing that the daughter they discarded so easily turned out to be perfectly fine without them. Better even. And that's enough for now, I guess.